The massive space station hung in the darkness like a metal moon. It spun slowly around the neutron star Kepler 442, its surface gleaming with thousands of lights. This was the Grand Assembly, home to the most powerful organization in the galaxy. For 50,000 years, the Galactic Council had kept peace among the stars. Inside the main chamber, 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle. Each representative looked different from the others. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed oxygen, others needed special masks. But they all shared one thing in common. They were angry. Ambassador Zexthul stood up from his chair. His blue skin changed color as he spoke, showing his emotions to everyone in the room. The tall alien had 6 arms and eyes that glowed like tiny suns. He was from the Hegemony, the oldest and most respected race in the council. Fellow council members, Zexthul began, his voice carrying across the chamber. We face a problem unlike any in our history. For 200 of their years, we have watched a new species spread across the galaxy. They call themselves humans. Murmurs filled the room. The other ambassadors shifted in their seats. Everyone knew about the humans. They were the topic that no one wanted to discuss. These humans, Zexthul continued, have ignored every law we have made. They have crossed into protected space without permission. They have built colonies on worlds that belong to other species. They have refused every invitation to join our council. The ambassador from the crystal mines, a being made of living rock, spoke up. Perhaps they do not understand our ways. Many young species need time to learn. Zexthul's skin turned a darker shade of blue. They understand. We have sent them messages in every language we know. We have offered them technology, knowledge, and friendship. Do you know what they did? The chamber fell silent. They sent back a message that said thanks but no thanks, that was all. Just those 4 words. Another ambassador, this one covered in thick fur, growled softly. Young species often act foolish. In time they learn respect. Time? Zexthul's voice rose. In 200 years they have built more colonies than most species manage in 2000. Their ships are everywhere. They trade with whoever they want. They go wherever they please. They act like we do not exist. The representative from the Void Walkers floated in the air, her gas-like body shimmering. What do you suggest we do? We cannot force them to join us. Zexthul walked to the center of the circle. Around him, holographic displays showed maps of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies. There were hundreds of them. Look at this, he said, pointing to the display. In the beginning, they had one world, one small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Now they have 400 worlds. 400! And every year they build more. The Crystal Mind ambassador studied the display. Their expansion is impressive, but why does this trouble you? Because they are changing everything. Zexthul's skin was now almost black with anger. Trade routes that we have used for thousands of years now go through human space. They charge fees for passage. Our merchant ships must follow their rules. The furry ambassador leaned forward. Perhaps we should simply avoid their territory. Avoid? Zexthul laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Look at the map again. They are everywhere. You cannot travel from the core worlds to the outer rim without crossing human space. They have made themselves impossible to ignore. The representative from the machine collective, a robot with glowing red eyes, spoke in a mechanical voice. Have they attacked any council ships? No, Zexthul admitted. But they have done something worse. They have made us irrelevant. For 50,000 years, all species have come to us first. They ask permission. They show respect. They follow our rules. The humans act like we are just another group of aliens. The Void Walker floated closer. Perhaps that is what we are to them. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several ambassadors stood up, shouting in different languages. Zexthul raised all 6 of his arms for silence. This is exactly what I mean, he said when the noise died down. They are making us fight among ourselves. They are destroying the unity we have built over thousands of years. The eldest ambassador in the room was from the Timekeepers. She was ancient even by her species standards, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. What do you propose, Zexthul? The blue alien took a deep breath. I propose we give them one final chance. We send them an ultimatum. They join the council and follow our laws, or we make them. Make them? The crystal mind sounded confused. How? War, Zexthul said simply. We combine our fleets. We show them the power of 12 civilizations united. They will have no choice but to surrender. The chamber fell completely silent. The word war was rarely spoken in council meetings. It was an ancient concept, something from the dark times before the council brought peace to the galaxy. The timekeeper spoke slowly. It has been 30,000 years since the council went to war. Are you certain this is necessary? Zexthul nodded. Look at their response to our diplomatic efforts. They treat us like we are equals. They act like they have the right to ignore us. If we do nothing, other species will start to think the same way. The council will fall apart. One by one, the ambassadors cast their votes. Some hesitated, but in the end, the decision was unanimous. The humans would be given one last chance to join the council. If they refused, they would face the combined might of 12 advanced civilizations. The message was prepared carefully. It explained the history of the council and the benefits of membership. It listed the laws that humans had broken and the consequences of continued defiance. At the end, it gave them one solar cycle to respond. The message traveled across the galaxy at faster than light speed. It reached Earth's capital city on a Tuesday morning. Director Sarah Chen of the Human Diplomatic Corps read it while drinking her morning coffee. Around the table sat the most important humans in the galaxy. Admiral Marcus Torres commanded the Human Defense Fleet. General Patricia Walsh led the Colonial Marines. Dr. Amanda Foster ran the Science Division. There were others, but these three made the decisions that mattered. Chen finished reading the message aloud. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Admiral Torres started to chuckle. The chuckle became a laugh. Soon everyone in the room was laughing. Are they serious? General Walsh wiped tears from her eyes. They want us to ask permission to travel through space? Dr. Foster shook her head. They think we're primitive. Look at this part where they offer to share their advanced technology with us. Admiral Torres leaned back in his chair. His gray hair and scarred face showed his years of military service. He had fought in the Titan Wars, the Mars Rebellion, and a dozen other conflicts. He was not easily impressed. 50,000 warships, he read from the message. The largest fleet in galactic history. They really think that's going to scare us. Chen looked around the table. Gentlemen, ladies, I think we need to send a response. Torres grinned. I've got one ready. He typed on his tablet for a few seconds, then showed it to the others. The message was short. Is that all? Chen smiled. Send it. The response traveled back across the galaxy. When it reached the council chamber, Ambassador Zexthul read it 3 times before he believed it. The humans were not afraid. They were not impressed. They were almost amused. For the first time in his long life, Zexthul wondered if the council had made a terrible mistake. The war fleet gathered at Nexus Point, a massive space station that served as the council's main military base. Ships arrived from every corner of the galaxy, each one representing the best that their civilization could build. The hegemony brought sleek vessels that looked like silver arrows. The crystal mines sent ships made from living rock that could repair themselves. The Void Walkers contributed ghost ships that could phase in and out of reality. Supreme Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Justice. He was a veteran of countless peacekeeping missions, though none had involved actual fighting. His species, the Iron Guard, were natural warriors who had given up war long ago to serve the Council. Status report, Veltar ordered. His aide, a young hegemony officer named Kexil, consulted his datapad. 50,000 ships assembled, Commander. All systems operational. Fleet morale is high. Veltar nodded as he watched the massive armada through the view screen. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields that could stop asteroid impacts. Their weapons could slice through metal like paper. Their engines could cross the galaxy in days. What do we know about human military capabilities? Veltar asked. Kexil brought up another screen. Intelligence reports are limited, sir. Humans are very secretive about their military, but we have observed their civilian ships and technology. Images appeared on the screen showing human vessels. They looked crude compared to council ships. Where alien ships were smooth and elegant, human ships were boxy and covered with armor plating. They seemed to be built more like flying fortresses than spacecraft. Their largest warship is something they call a battleship, Kexil continued. It appears to be about 2 kilometers long and heavily armed with kinetic weapons. Kinetic weapons? Veltar sounded surprised. They still use projectiles? Yes, sir. Metal slugs fired at high velocity, Very primitive compared to our plasma cannons and quantum disruptors. Another officer joined the conversation. She was from the Machine Collective, her metal body reflecting the bridge lights. Our analysis suggests human ships are approximately 500 years behind our technology level. Veltar studied the images more carefully. The human ships did look old-fashioned. Their hulls were thick metal instead of advanced composites. Their weapons were simple cannons instead of energy beams. Even their engines seemed to use basic fusion instead of the antimatter drives that powered Council ships. How many ships do they have? Veltar asked. Best estimates put their entire fleet at around 10,000 vessels, Kexil replied. Most of them are small patrol ships or cargo vessels with weapons added. The Machine Collective officer made a sound like electronic laughter. 10,000 primitive ships against 50,000 advanced vessels. The humans cannot possibly resist for more than a few hours. Veltar wasn't so sure. He had read the intelligence reports about human history. These beings had been fighting wars for their entire existence. They had used everything from sharp sticks to nuclear weapons. They had even fought each other in space during something called the Colony Wars. Do not underestimate them, Veltar warned. Any species that survives constant warfare must have learned something about fighting. Kexil looked puzzled. Sir, with respect, what could they have learned that we do not know? War is a science. We have studied it for thousands of years. Our battle computers can predict the outcome of any engagement. Veltar turned away from the screen. Perhaps. But remember, we have studied war. They have lived it. The fleet began moving toward human space. Each ship was a small city, filled with advanced technology and operated by crews who had trained for years. The journey would take 3 days at maximum speed. During that time, the fleet sent warnings to human colonies. The warnings were polite but firm. They explained that the Council fleet was approaching to enforce galactic law. They offered safe passage to any humans who wanted to evacuate. They promised that civilians would not be harmed if human forces surrendered. Quickly, the responses they received were unexpected. Message from the human colony at Wolf 3559, reported the communications officer. They say, and I quote, "Come and try it, you alien scumbags." What about the mining station at Tau Ceti? They responded with coordinates, sir. They say it's the location of their weapons depot and we're welcome to come blow it up if we think we can. Veltar frowned. Are they surrendering or threatening us? I believe they are threatening us, sir. More messages arrived as the fleet traveled deeper into human space. None of them sounded like surrender. Instead, the humans seemed to be excited. Some colonies sent messages describing the weapons they planned to use. Others included detailed lists of Council ship weaknesses they had researched. A few even sent musical recordings that appeared to be war songs. Commander, Kexil said nervously, I'm receiving a transmission from Earth itself. Put it through. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Torres. His gray hair was messy and his uniform wrinkled like he had been working for days without rest. Behind him, other humans hurried back and forth, preparing for war. This is Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Fleet, he said. I understand you folks are planning to visit our neighborhood. Veltar stepped forward. I am Supreme Commander Veltar of the Galactic Council. You have been given the opportunity to surrender peacefully. I strongly suggest you take it. Torres smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Commander, I've got to ask you something. How many wars has the Galactic Council fought? The Council has maintained peace for 50,000 years, Veltar replied proudly. That's what I thought, Torres said. You know how many wars humanity has fought in the last 100 years alone? Veltar remained silent. 17 major conflicts, not counting the small ones, Torres continued. We've fought wars on planets, moons, asteroids, and in the empty space between stars. We've used every weapon you can imagine, and a few you probably can't. Your primitive weapons are no match for our technology, Veltar said. Torres laughed. Primitive? Son, we've been killing each other so long we've turned it into an art form. We've got weapons you've never heard of and tactics that would give your computers nightmares. The transmission ended abruptly. Veltar stared at the blank screen, feeling slightly unsettled. There had been something in the human's voice. Not fear or anger, but something else. Something that reminded him of his own people's ancient warrior songs. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving multiple transmissions from human ships. What are they saying? It's music, sir. Battle songs. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The bridge filled with alien sounds. human voices singing in harmony, accompanied by primitive instruments. The words were in their strange language, but the meaning was clear. These were songs of war and death and glory. Veltar listened to the music and felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard songs like this before, in the ancient recordings of his own people's dark past. These were the songs warriors sang when they expected to die. "Commander," Kexiel said quietly, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach." Veltar shook his head. "No, we have come too far to turn back now. But prepare the fleet for battle. I think these humans plan to fight." As the Council fleet approached the outer edge of human space, sensors detected movement. Human ships were gathering at Proxima Centauri, the first target on the Council's list. There weren't many of them, maybe 200 vessels against the Council's advance force of 5,000. "Should we demand surrender again?" Kexiel asked. Before Veltar could answer, a new transmission arrived. This time it was from the human fleet itself. A young woman in a military uniform appeared on screen. Her ship's bridge was smaller and more cramped than the Council vessels, but her crew looked alert and ready. "Council fleet, this is Captain Sarah Kim of the human vessel Defiance. We have a message for you." Veltar gestured for the communications officer to respond. "This is Supreme Commander Veltar. You are outnumbered 25-1. Surrender now and avoid unnecessary casualties." Captain Kim smiled. "Commander, we've thought about your offer very carefully. We discussed it with our crews, contacted our families, and prayed to our gods. And we decided that 25-1 sounds about fair. See you in hell." The transmission ended. Veltar looked around his bridge at his officers' confused faces. He was beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. These weren't primitive beings cowering before superior technology. These were warriors who thought fighting impossible odds was normal. "All ships," Veltar ordered, "prepare for battle. And remember, we are dealing with a species that finds war entertaining." The two fleets faced each other across the darkness of space. On one side, the largest armada in galactic history, equipped with technology that could destroy planets. On the other side, 200 human ships that looked like they had been built in someone's garage. The humans struck first. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began without warning. One moment, the two fleets faced each other in the silence of space. The next moment, human missiles were streaking across the darkness like angry hornets. Supreme Commander Veltar watched from his command chair as the first wave of projectiles approached his fleet. His defensive systems activated automatically, shooting down most of the missiles before they could reach their targets. A few got through, striking Council ships with bright flashes of nuclear fire. "Damage report," Veltar ordered. "Minimal damage to 3 vessels," reported his tactical officer. "Their shields absorbed most of the impact," Veltar nodded. This was going exactly as expected. The humans had struck first with their primitive weapons, and Council technology had easily stopped the attack. Now it was time to show them real firepower. "Return fire," he commanded. "Target their largest ships first." The Council fleet's response was beautiful and terrible. Beams of pure energy lanced across space, each one carrying enough power to melt a mountain. Plasma bolts followed, turning the darkness into a light show of destruction. The weapons were precise, efficient, and overwhelming. The first energy beam struck the human battleship Indomitable. Veltar expected to see the ship vaporize instantly. Instead, he watched in amazement as the beam carved a massive hole through the vessel's hull, but the ship kept flying. Emergency lights flickered along its damaged sections, and its guns continued firing. "Impossible," whispered Kexiel. "That beam should have destroyed them completely." A plasma bolt hit another human ship, the cruiser Relentless. The alien weapon burned through its armor plating like a knife through paper, setting off secondary explosions throughout the vessel. But instead of dying, the ship turned toward the nearest Council vessel and accelerated. "What are they doing?" the tactical officer asked. Veltar realized with growing horror what was happening. "They're ramming us." "All ships, evasive maneuvers." The damaged human cruiser slammed into a Council destroyer at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that lit up half the battlefield. When the light faded, nothing remained but twisted metal and radiation. "Sir," called the communications officer, "I'm receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Audio only. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was rough and filled with static. It sounded like someone shouting over the noise of alarms and explosions. This is Captain Rodriguez of the heavy cruiser Revenge. My ship is going down, but I'm taking some of you alien bastards with me. Another human ship, trailing atmosphere and debris, turned toward the council line. Its engines were damaged and one side of its hull was completely gone, but it kept coming. All weapons, concentrate fire on that vessel, Veltar ordered. Energy beams and plasma bolts hammered the approaching human ship. Pieces of it broke off and spun away into space. Its bridge was destroyed, then its engine section. But somehow, impossibly, it kept moving forward. The dying ship struck a council battlecruiser just as its remaining nuclear warheads detonated. The explosion was so bright that the bridge lights dimmed automatically to protect the crew's eyes. When vision returned, both ships were gone. "What kind of beings are these?" Kexel asked in a shaking voice. The battle raged for hours. The council fleet had every advantage. Better weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. They should have won easily. But the humans refused to fight like civilized beings. When their weapons were destroyed, they rammed enemy ships. When their engines failed, they detonated their own vessels as bombs. When they ran out of missiles, they fired chunks of their own hull as projectiles. A human destroyer took a direct hit from 3 plasma cannons. Its entire forward section was blown away, leaving just the engine room and rear weapons. Instead of retreating, the remaining crew continued fighting, using their ship's damaged hull as cover while they fired everything they had. "They're insane," said the Machine Collective officer. "No logical being would continue fighting when defeat is certain." But Veltar was beginning to understand. These humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to hurt their enemies as much as possible before they died. Every human ship that fell took council vessels with it. "Sir, multiple human reinforcements detected," the sensor operator called out. Veltar looked at his tactical display. More human ships were arriving, but these weren't military vessels. Some were cargo haulers with weapons welded to their hulls. Others were mining ships carrying nuclear explosives. There was even what looked like a passenger liner, its hull painted bright yellow and covered with amateur artwork. "Are those civilians?" Kexel asked. "Looks like it," Veltar replied grimly. "They're bringing their families to war." The new arrivals threw themselves into battle with the same reckless courage as the military ships. A mining vessel loaded with nuclear charges rammed a council heavy cruiser, taking out both ships in a blast that registered on sensors across the star system. The passenger liner, moving impossibly fast for such a large vessel, somehow managed to get close enough to a council battleship to board it. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call from the Shining Star," reported the communications officer. "What's happening?" "They say humans have boarded their ship and are fighting in the corridors." The humans appear to be singing. Veltar closed his eyes. His species had ancient legends about warriors who sang as they fought. Those warriors had been the most dangerous of all, because they had already accepted death and cared only about taking their enemies with them. The battle turned into a nightmare. Human tactics made no sense by any civilized standard. They used their own ships as shields, their own crews as weapons, their own destruction as a tool of war. A human captain actually detonated his ship's reactor while docked with a council vessel, destroying both ships and everyone aboard. "Commander," called his aide, "we're receiving surrender offers from several human ships." Veltar felt a moment of relief. Finally, the humans were seeing reason. "What are their terms?" "They're offering to surrender, sir. They want to come aboard our ships to discuss terms." Something about that didn't sound right. "How many want to surrender?" "About 50 ships, sir. They're requesting permission to dock with our largest vessels." Veltar's blood went cold. "Do not let them board." All ships refused docking permission. But it was too late. Several council commanders had already agreed to accept surrendering humans. The surrendering ships docked with council vessels and immediately exploded, taking their hosts with them. "Treachery," Kexel shouted. "No," Veltar said quietly. "Strategy. They're using our own rules against us." The battle continued through the night. Human ships kept arriving, not in organized fleets, but one or two at a time, like individuals who had heard about the fight and decided to join in. Each one fought until it was destroyed, and each one took council ships with it. By dawn, the battlefield was a graveyard of twisted metal and cooling plasma. The council fleet had won, technically. They controlled the star system and had destroyed the human defenders. But the cost had been unthinkable. "Casualty report," Veltar ordered. Kexil's voice was barely a whisper. 3,000 ships lost, sir. 15,000 more damaged. We destroyed approximately 200 human vessels. Veltar stared at the numbers. They had lost 15 ships for every human ship destroyed. And this was just one small colony system. Intelligence reports said there were 399 more human worlds. Sir, the communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Admiral Torres appeared on screen again. This time he looked tired, but his eyes were still bright with defiance. Commander Veltar, Torres said, I hope you enjoyed your little victory. That was just our local defense force. You want to see what we can really do? Admiral, surely you understand that resistance is futile, Veltar replied. We have 47,000 ships remaining. Torres smiled, and this time there was something cold and dangerous in his expression. 47,000? That's cute. You know what we have? Veltar waited. We have 400 worlds full of very angry humans, and we're just getting started. The transmission ended. Veltar looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. They had all seen the same thing he had. The humans weren't defeated. They weren't even discouraged. If anything, news of the battle would only make them fight harder. Sir, Kexel asked quietly, what are your orders? Veltar studied the tactical display showing the positions of his remaining ships. For the first time in his long military career, he was facing an enemy that didn't care about odds or logic or survival. An enemy that had turned warfare into something beyond strategy or technology. Signal the fleet, he said finally. We advanced to the next human system. But deep in his heart, Supreme Commander Veltar was beginning to suspect that the Galactic Council had made the greatest mistake in its 50,000-year history. They had declared war on a species that was better at war than they were, and the humans were just getting warmed up. News of the Battle of Proxima Centauri spread across human space faster than the Council fleet could travel. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Humanity didn't just prepare for war, they transformed into war itself. On Earth, Director Sarah Chen stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva. The massive chamber hummed with activity as thousands of people worked at computer terminals, coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. But this wasn't just about soldiers and ships. This was about turning an entire species into a weapon. Status report, Chen ordered. General Walsh approached with a tablet full of data. Ma'am, every industrial facility in human space is being converted to military production. Shipyards that built cargo vessels are now making destroyers. Factories that produced household goods are manufacturing weapons. Even toy companies are making targeting computers. Chen nodded. What about civilian response? Beyond our expectations, ma'am. We're getting volunteers faster than we can process them. Grandparents, teenagers, even children are asking how they can help. The colony at New Texas sent us a message saying they've taught their kids to build bombs in case the aliens try to land. Dr. Foster, the head of the science division, joined the conversation. Sarah, we need to talk about the research data from Proxima Centauri. Chen turned to face her old friend. What did we learn? Their shields can be overwhelmed by concentrated kinetic impacts. Their hulls are stronger than ours, but they're designed for energy weapons, not physical damage. Most importantly, their crews panic when facing tactics they don't understand, such as ramming, suicide attacks, using civilian ships as weapons. Their battle computers can't predict our behavior because we don't fight like they expect civilized beings to fight. General Walsh grinned. So we keep being uncivilized. More than that, Dr. Foster said. We escalate. If they thought Proxima Centauri was bad, wait until they see what we've been planning. Across human space, the transformation was remarkable. On New Shanghai, a planet known for its peaceful farmers, tractors were being converted into mobile missile launchers. The farmers themselves were learning to use their irrigation systems to create tactical flooding that would trap enemy ground forces. On Titan Station, the asteroid miners had organized themselves into an artillery unit. They were using their industrial equipment to fire massive chunks of rock at incredible speeds toward predicted Council fleet positions. Each projectile carried the kinetic energy of a nuclear weapon. Even children were part of the war effort. Schools had been converted into tactical training centers where kids learned orbital mechanics so they could calculate firing solutions for planetary defense guns. Their young minds, unburdened by preconceptions about what was impossible, came up with ideas that amazed their elders. Why don't we just throw things at them really hard? Asked 8-year-old Tommy Chen, Director Chen's own nephew. What kind of things? His teacher had asked. Everything. Rocks, old ships, garbage, dead satellites. If they're not expecting it, anything can be a weapon. That conversation led to Project Junkyard, where every piece of space debris in human territory was being collected and aimed at the approaching Council fleet. Thousands of old satellites, broken ships, and even household trash were being accelerated to incredible speeds and sent toward the enemy. Meanwhile, the human military was preparing surprises that would have horrified civilized species. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of his new flagship, Unconquered, watching the final preparations. "What's the status on the special projects?" he asked. Captain Kim, promoted after her ship was destroyed at Proxima Centauri, consulted her notes. "Project Kamikaze is ready, sir. We've converted 500 cargo ships into remote-controlled bombs. Each one carries enough nuclear material to take out a Council dreadnought. Project Berserker? 2,000 volunteer crews ready for suicide missions. They've been given the fastest ships we have and enough firepower to hurt anything they can catch. And Project Pandora?" Captain Kim's expression grew dark. "The bioweapons are ready, sir. Though I still think using them is a mistake." Torres nodded grimly. "Let's hope we don't have to. But if the Council wants to see how nasty humans can get, we'll show them." The human response wasn't limited to conventional warfare. Across their territory, civilian populations were preparing for guerrilla warfare that would make occupation impossible. Every human colony had hidden weapons caches, underground bunkers, and detailed plans for resistance. On New Ireland, the colonists had turned their entire planet into a trap. Fake surrender signals would lure Council ships into the atmosphere, where hidden surface-to-air missiles would destroy them. The planet's children had been evacuated to underground cities, while the adults prepared to fight to the last person. Even more disturbing from the Council's perspective was how humans shared information. Every battle tactic, every weakness discovered, every successful strategy was immediately transmitted to all human forces. They were learning and adapting faster than any species in galactic history. Supreme Commander Veltar discovered this the hard way when his fleet reached the Wolf 359 system. Intelligence had suggested this was another lightly defended colony. Instead, they found a fortress. The humans had used their knowledge from Proxima Centauri to prepare specific countermeasures. When Council ships fired their energy weapons, the humans used clouds of metallic chaff to diffuse the beams. When Council vessels tried to maintain distance, the humans fired guided missiles that could pursue targets for hours. Worst of all, the human ships at Wolf 359 were different from the ones at Proxima Centauri. They had been rebuilt with heavier armor and new weapons designed specifically to fight Council technology. In just a few weeks, humanity had revolutionized their entire military doctrine. "Sir," Kexiel reported, "the humans appear to have developed new tactics." "What kind of tactics?" "They're using their damaged ships as decoys. When we target a vessel that appears disabled, it suddenly comes to life and rams us. They're also coordinating attacks with civilian vessels that we didn't even know were armed." Veltar watched his tactical display as another Council ship fell to human treachery. A seemingly harmless cargo vessel had gotten close enough to deploy boarding parties that fought their way to the enemy's reactor and detonated it from the inside. "How many humans were on that ship?" he asked. 15, sir. They traded 15 lives for a ship with 800 crew members." "Madness," whispered the Machine Collective officer. But Veltar was beginning to understand that it wasn't madness. It was mathematics. The humans had calculated that they could win a war of attrition by making every human death cost the Council multiple alien lives. They were turning warfare into a cruel equation where the side willing to sacrifice more would eventually triumph. The battle at Wolf 359 lasted a week. When it ended, the Council fleet had lost another 2,000 ships to destroy 300 human vessels. Even worse, human reinforcements were arriving constantly. Not organized fleets, but individuals and small groups who had heard about the fighting and come to help. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human commander." This time it wasn't Admiral Torres, but a woman Veltar didn't recognize. She was young, perhaps 25 in human years, with bright eyes and a smile that somehow made her more frightening than any war cry. "Commander Veltar," she said cheerfully, "this is Colonel Sarah Martinez of the Human Colonial Marines. I wanted to thank you for the excellent target practice." "You have lost this battle," Veltar replied. "Your ships are destroyed." "Oh, these weren't our ships," Martinez laughed. "These were volunteers. Farmers, miners, shopkeepers. People who had never been in space combat before last week. Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. Then where is your real military? Martinez's smile became predatory. They're waiting for you at our core worlds. See, we figure you'll need about 6 months to fight your way through our outer colonies. That's just enough time to finish our preparations. What preparations? You'll find out. But I'll give you a hint. Everything you've seen so far has been us holding back. We didn't want to show you our best tricks too early. The transmission ended. Veltar stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had just heard. The humans considered the battle so far to be minor skirmishes. They were deliberately letting the Council fleet advance while they prepared something worse. Sir? Kexel said quietly. Perhaps we should request reinforcements from the Council. Veltar checked his fleet status. In 2 battles, he had lost 5,000 ships, 10% of the largest armada in galactic history. At this rate, the human colonies would destroy his entire fleet before he reached their core worlds. Send the message, he ordered. Tell the Council we need more ships. The reply came back faster than expected. The Council was already mobilizing additional fleets, but they were also receiving disturbing reports from their own territories. Human raids were striking deep behind Council lines, attacking supply bases and communication stations. Somehow, human ships were appearing in places they shouldn't be able to reach. Even more troubling were the propaganda broadcasts. Humans had begun transmitting messages to alien civilian populations, not threatening them, but simply explaining why they were fighting. 6 months had passed since the war began and the galaxy was burning. What had started as a simple police action to bring humanity under Council control had become a nightmare that threatened the foundation of galactic civilization. On the Council's home worlds, panic was spreading faster than space plague. 3 member species had already withdrawn from the war, claiming they needed to defend their own territory from human raids. 2 more were secretly negotiating with human representatives, hoping to avoid the fate that was befalling the Council fleet. Ambassador Zexthul stood in what remained of the Grand Assembly Chamber. Half the station had been destroyed in a human attack 3 weeks ago. The humans had somehow infiltrated a suicide squad past every defense to detonate a nuclear device in the Council's most sacred space. Status report, Zexthul demanded. The surviving ambassadors looked like beings who had seen the end of their world. The Crystal Mind representative's usually perfect surface was cracked and dull. The Void Walker barely maintained physical form. Even the ancient Timekeeper seemed to have aged decades in the past few months. Supreme Commander Veltar's fleet has been reduced, reported the Machine Collective ambassador. Of the original 50,000 ships, fewer than 15,000 remain operational. And what have we gained for this sacrifice? Silence filled the chamber. Finally, the Timekeeper spoke in a voice like autumn leaves. We have captured 23 human colony worlds. At the cost of 35,000 ships and millions of lives, Zexthul's skin had turned almost black with despair. 23 worlds out of 400. At this rate, we will lose our entire military before conquering half their territory. It gets worse, said the Crystal Mind. Intelligence reports indicate the humans are not defending their outer colonies with full strength. They appear to be trading space for time while they prepare something at their core worlds. The Void Walker shimmered with distress. What could they be preparing? They have already shown us horrors beyond imagination. As if in answer to her question, a new transmission arrived. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to Director Sarah Chen. She looked older than when the war began, with lines of stress around her eyes and gray streaks in her hair. But her expression was calm and confident. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, I am broadcasting from Earth, capital of the Human Federation. I have a proposition for you. Zexthul stepped forward. The time for negotiation has passed, human. Your species will submit to Council authority or be destroyed. Chen smiled, and the expression was terrifying in its gentleness. Ambassador, I don't think you understand your situation. Let me show you something. The image changed to show space around Earth. What the Council representatives saw made several of them gasp in horror. The entire solar system had been turned into a fortress. Massive weapons platforms orbited every planet. The asteroid belt had been converted into a minefield of nuclear mines. Most shocking of all, humans had somehow moved their moon into a different orbit, turning it into a giant gun platform. This is just one system, Chen continued. Every core human world has been similarly prepared. We estimate your remaining fleet could take perhaps 3 of our core systems before being completely destroyed. Impossible, whispered Zexthul. No species could militarize so completely in such a short time. You don't understand humans very well, Chen replied. When we decide to fight, we don't just use our military. We use everything. Our children design weapons. Our grandparents volunteer for suicide missions. Our scientists create horrors that would give your worst nightmares pause. Another image appeared showing a new type of human ship. It was larger than anything they had built before. Its hull black as space and covered with weapons that didn't match any known technology. We call this the World Killer class, Chen explained. We've built 50 of them in the past 6 months. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet. But that's not the worst part. The image zoomed in on the ship's hull, revealing strange, organic-looking components. We've learned to integrate captured Council technology with our own designs. Your own weapons improved by human engineering and human ruthlessness. Every ship you lose makes us stronger. Zexthul felt his world crumbling around him. What do you want? Unconditional surrender, Chen said simply. The Galactic Council will dissolve itself. All member species will recognize human authority in galactic affairs. Council military forces will be disbanded. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several ambassadors shouted at once, their languages mixing into chaos. But beneath the noise, Zexthul could hear something else, the sound of fear. Never, he shouted. The Council has maintained galactic peace for 50,000 years. Chen's expression didn't change. And in 6 months, humanity has brought you to the edge of extinction. Which one of us do you think is better at large-scale organization? Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The tactical display showed impossible readings. Massive energy signatures appearing throughout Council space. Sir, called a technician. We're detecting human fleets at Hegemony Prime, Crystal Home, the Machine Core, and 17 other Council worlds simultaneously. Zexthul stared at the display in disbelief. How is this possible? We would have detected such massive fleet movements. We didn't send fleets, Chen said calmly. We sent individuals. Volunteers who spent months traveling through space in hidden ships waiting for this moment. They're not invasion forces, they're demonstration teams. The main screen split to show multiple human commanders, each broadcasting from a different Council world. They all looked tired but determined, like people who had traveled a long way to make a point. This is Colonel Martinez, broadcasting from orbit around Hegemony Prime, said a familiar voice. We have nuclear devices positioned at strategic points around your planet. Not to destroy you, but to show you that we could if we wanted to. Another commander spoke up. Captain Rodriguez here at the Machine Core. We've already infiltrated your primary computer networks. We could shut down your entire civilization with a single command. The demonstrations continued. Every major Council world had been penetrated by human forces that had somehow traveled undetected across the galaxy. But the humans weren't attacking. They were simply proving that they could attack whenever they chose. How? Zexthul asked weakly. Trade ships, Chen explained. Merchant vessels that your own people allowed through your borders. Diplomatic couriers carrying messages between your worlds. Even garbage haulers taking out your trash. We've been planning this for months. The timekeeper spoke for the first time in hours. This is not how civilized beings conduct warfare. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Civilized? You declared war on us for refusing to obey your laws. You attacked our colonies and killed our people. You wanted to see what humans do when pushed to our limits. Congratulations. Now you know. The tactical display updated again, showing the positions of Veltar's remaining fleet. The ships were scattered across a dozen systems, trying to hold territories that couldn't be held while defending worlds that couldn't be defended. Sir, the technician reported, Supreme Commander Veltar is requesting permission to retreat to Council Core space. Granted, Zexthul said automatically, then realized what he had just done. He had authorized the complete abandonment of the war effort. Smart choice, Chen said. Now about our terms for ending this war. You said unconditional surrender, the Crystal Mind representative said bitterly. That was our opening position. But I'm feeling generous today. Here's our final offer. The Galactic Council will publicly acknowledge that humanity is not subject to Council authority. All Council forces will withdraw from human space immediately. Any future contact between Council species and humanity will be on equal terms, not as rulers and subjects. Zexthul looked around the chamber at his fellow ambassadors. They all wore the same expression of defeat. In 6 months, humanity had accomplished what no species had managed in 50,000 years. They had brought the Galactic Council to its knees. And if we refuse? He asked. Chen's smile returned, and this time it was genuinely frightening. Then we continue the war, but next time we won't be so gentle. The forces you've been fighting are our local militias and volunteer units. You haven't seen our actual military yet. What do you mean? Did you think our entire species was involved in this war? We've been fighting you with about 10% of our available forces. The other 90% have been preparing for something much more decisive. The screen showed another image. Human shipyards in the emptiness between stars, hidden from all detection. Thousands of ships were under construction, each one larger and more deadly than anything humanity had built before. We've been building a fleet that could conquer the entire galaxy if necessary, Chen continued. We really don't want to use it. War is expensive and destructive, but if you force us to, we will reduce every council world to rubble and rebuild galactic civilization according to human principles. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of alien hearts beating too fast. Finally, the timekeeper spoke. The council accepts your terms. Zexthul started to object, but the ancient alien raised a hand for silence. We have seen enough.